J.B. Priestley wrote Inspector Calls in the 1940s, but the play is actually set in 1912, shortly before World War I, and around the same time as Downton Abbey, which many of you doubtless watched. But whereas Downton Abbey chronicled the demise of the landed gentry, and Inspector Calls considers the rise of the middle-class businessmen and industrialists who partially replaced them, and the position and treatment of the working-class men and women who served them. Both Downton Abbey and An Inspector Calls reveal that there was no shortage of skeletons hidden in the cupboards. Our scene is set in the home of the Burling family, a comfortable and substantial house in the suburbs of Brumley, a fictitious town in the North Midlands. Arthur Burling is a prosperous textile manufacturer whose wife Sybil and son Eric are celebrating the engagement of their daughter Sheila to Gerald Croft, son of a local rival.
Gerald. As a matter of fact, Finchley told me it's exactly the same port your father gets from him.
Then it'll be all right. The governor prides himself on being a good judge of port. I don't pretend to know much about it.
I should jolly well think not, Gerald. I'd hate you to know all about port, like one of those purple-faced old men.
Yeah, I'm not a purple-faced old man.
Oh, no, not yet. But then you don't know about port, do you?
Now then, Sybil, you must take a little tonight. Special occasion, you know.
Oh, yes, go on, Mummy. You must drink our health.
Oh, very well then. Just a little. Oh, thank you, Gerald. All right, Edna. I'll ring from the drawing room when we want coffee. Probably in about half an hour.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, this is very nice. Very nice. Good dinner too, Sybil. Tell cook from me.
You shouldn't say such things, Arthur.
Absolutely first class.
Oh, come, Sybil. I'm treating Gerald like one of the family, and I'm sure he won't object.
Go on, Gerald. Just you object.
Wouldn't dream of it. In fact, I insist. I insist on being one of the family now. I've been trying long enough, haven't I? Haven't I? You know I have.
Of course she does, Gerald.
Yes, except all last summer when you never came near me, and I wondered what had happened to you.
And I told you. I was awfully busy at the works all that time.
Yes, that's what you say.
You know, you mustn't cheese him, Sheila. You'll find out that when you're married, that men who have important business to attend to sometimes have to spend nearly all their time and energy on business. You'll have to get used to that just as I did.
Well, I don't believe I will. So just you, be careful.
Oh, I will. I will.
Now what's the joke?
Oh, I don't know really. Suddenly felt like I had to laugh.
You're Tiddly.
I'm not.
What an expression, Sheila, the things you girls pick up these days.
If you think that's the best you can do.
Oh, don't be an ass, Eric.
Oh, come on, you two. What about this famous toast of yours, Arthur?
Yes, of course. Well, Gerald, I know you agreed that we should only have this quiet little family party. It's a pity Sir George and Lady Croft can't be with us, but they're abroad, and so it can't be helped. As I told you, they sent me a very nice cable. Couldn't be nicer. I'm not sorry that we're celebrating quietly like this.
Much nicer, really, I think.
I agree.
So do I. But it makes speech making more difficult.
Well, don't do any then. Look, we'll just drink to their health and have done with it, shall we?
No, we won't. It's one of the happiest nights of my life. And one day, I hope, Eric, when you'll have a daughter of your own, you'll understand why. Gerald, I'm going to tell you frankly, without any pretences, that your engagement to Sheila makes a tremendous lot to me. She'll make you happy, and I'm sure you'll make her happy. You're just the kind of son-in-law I've always wanted. Your father and I have been friendly rivals in business for many years, and although Crofts Limited are both older and bigger than Burling and Company, and now that you've brought us together, and perhaps we may look forward to a time when Crofts and Burlings are no longer competing but are working together for lower costs and higher prices.
Here, and I think my father would totally agree with that.
Now, Arthur, I don't think you ought to talk business on an occasion like this.
Neither do I. It's all wrong.
Quite so, quite so. I agree with you. I only mentioned it in passing. What I did want to say, that Sheila's a lucky girl, and I think you're a fortunate young man too, Gerald.
I know I am. This once, I know.
So, here's wishing the pair of you the very best that life can bring. Gerald and Sheila.
Yes, Gerald. Yes, Sheila, darling. Our congratulations and our very best wishes.
Thank you, thank you.
Oh, yes.
All the best then. Well, Sheila can, well, she's got a nasty temper sometimes, you know, but it's not really that bad. Hey, good old Sheila, yeah.
Good old Sheila.
Chump, I can't drink to this. When can I have a drink?
You can drink to me.
All right then. I drink to you, Gerald.
Thank you, and I drink to you. And hope I can make you as happy as you deserve to be.
You be careful, or you'll have me start weeping.
Well, perhaps this will help you sleep.
Oh, Gerald, you've got it. Is it the one that you... Oh. It's the one you wanted me to have.
Yes, the very one.
Oh, it's wonderful. Look, Mummy, isn't it a beauty?
Oh, it's...
Darling.
Oh, they can't steady the bus.
I think it's perfect. Now, I really feel engaged.
So you would, darling. It's a lovely ring. Do take care of it.
Careful. I'll never let it out of my sight for an instant.
Well, it came at just the right moment. That was very clever of you, Gerald. Now, Arthur, if you've no more to say, I think Sheila and I had better go into the drawing room. Leave you men.
I just want to say this. Sheila, are you listening?
I'm sorry, Daddy.
This concerns you too, and after all, I don't often make speeches at you.
Actually, I was listening. I know you don't think I am, but I am listening.
Well, I'm delighted about this engagement, and I hope it won't be long before you're married. And I want to say this. There's a good deal of silly talk about these days, but I speak as a hard-headed businessman who has to take risks and know what he's about. I say you can ignore all this silly, pessimistic talk. When you marry, you'll be marrying at a very good time. Yes, a very good time. And soon it will be an even better time. Last month, just because the miners went out on strike and people were talking about labour troubles in the near future, don't worry, we passed the worst of it. We employers at last are coming together to see our interests and protect our interests and the interests of capital now properly protected. And we're in for a time of steadily increasing prosperity.
I believe you're right, sir.
What about war?
Glad you mentioned it, Eric. I'm coming to that. Just because the Kaiser makes a speech or two, or a few German officers have too much to drink and begin talking nonsense, you hear some people say that war's inevitable. And to that I say, fiddlesticks. The Germans don't want war. Nobody wants war, except some half-civilized folks in the Balkans. And why? There's too much at stake these days. Everything to lose, but nothing to gain by war. Okay then, Eric. Just let me finish. Eric, you've a lot to learn yet, and I'm talking as a hard-headed, practical man of business. And I say there isn't a chance of war. The world's developing so fast that war will be impossible. Look at the progress we're making. In a year or two, we'll have airplanes that will be able to take us anywhere. And look at the way the automobile's making headway. Bigger and faster all the time. And then ships. Why, a friend of mine went over the new liner last week, the Titanic. She sails next week and is 46,800 tons. New York in 5 days, and every luxury. And unsinkable. Absolutely unsinkable. That's what you've got to keep your eye on. Facts like those. Progress like that, and not a few German officers talking nonsense and a few scaremongers here making a fuss about nothing. Now, you three young people, just listen to this. Let's say in 30 years or so, say 1940, you may be giving a little party like this for your daughter or your son's engagement, and I tell you, by that time, you'll be living in a world that will have forgotten all about these capital versus labour agitations and all these little scaremongering stories about war. There'll be peace and prosperity and rapid progress everywhere, except, of course, in Russia, which will be behind naturally.
Arthur?
Yes, my dear, I'm talking too much. But you youngsters just remember what I said. We can't let these Bernard Shaws and H.G. Wellses do all the talking. We, hard-headed, practical men of business, must say something sometime. And we don't guess. We've had experience, and we know.
Yes, of course, dear. Well, don't keep Gerald in here for too long. Eric, I'd like to see you for a moment.
Help yourself to the port. By the way, there's something I'd like to mention. In strict confidence, while we're by ourselves, I have an idea that your mother, Lady Croft, while she doesn't object to my girl, feels you might have done better for yourself socially. No, Gerald, that's all right. Don't blame her. She comes from a very good county family, landed people and so forth, and so it's only natural. But what I wanted to say is there's a fair chance that I might find my way into the next honours list. Just a nicer, of course.
Oh, I say, congratulations.
Thanks, but it's a bit too early for that, so don't say anything. But I've had a hint or two. You see, I was Lord Mayor here 2 years ago when royalty visited us. And I've always been regarded as a sound, useful party man. So, well, I gather there's a very good chance of a night-up, so long as we behave ourselves and don't get into the police court or start a scandal there.
You seem to be a very nice and well-behaved family.
We think we are.
So, if that's the only obstacle, sir, well, I think you might as well accept My congratulations.
No, I couldn't do that. And don't say anything yet.
What, not even to my mother? I know she'd be absolutely delighted.
Well, when she comes back, you might drop a hint to her, and you can promise her that we'll try to keep out of trouble for the next few months.
Hey, what's the joke? Started telling stories?
No. Want another glass of port?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay, carry on. Yeah.
Oh,
Started what he had.
Mother says that we mustn't stay too long. But I don't think it matters. I've left them talking about clothes again. Why, you'd think girls never had any clothes before they got married. No, women are potty about them, you know.
Yes, but you've got to remember, my boy, that clothes means something quite different to a woman. No, not just something to wear, and not only something to make them look prettier, but, well, a sort of sign of, token of self-respect.
That's true.
Oh, yes, I remember.
Well, what do you remember?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Sounds a bit fishy to me.
Yes, you don't know what some of these young boys get up to nowadays. More money to spend and time to spare than I had when I was Eric's age. They worked us hard in those days and kept us short of cash. Though even then we broke out and had a bit of fun sometimes.
I'll bet you did.
But this is the point. I don't want to lecture you two young fellows again, but what many of you don't seem to understand now, when things are much easier, is that a man has to make his own way. Has to look after himself, and his family too, of course, when he has one. And so long as he does that, he won't come to much harm. But the way everybody talks these days, and you have to look after each other like bees in a hive, community and all that nonsense. But take my word for it, you youngsters, I've learned in the hard school of experience, and I know that a man has to mind his own business, after himself and his own, and on occasion I'm feeling contented for once. I wanted you to have the benefits of my experience.
Please, sir, an inspector called.
An inspector? What kind of inspector?
A police inspector. He says his name is Inspector Gould.
Don't know him. Does he want to see me?
Yes, sir. He says it's important.
All right, Edna. Show him in and give us some more light. I'm still on the bench. It may be something about a warrant.
Sure to be. Unless Eric's been up to something. And that would be awkward.
Would very awkward, yes.
What do you mean?
Only joking. We were talking about you when you were out. A joke, really.
Well, I don't think it's funny.
What's the matter with you?
Nothing.
Inspector Gould.
Thank you, Edna.
Mr. Burling.
Yes, sit down, Inspector.
Thank you, Mr. Burling.
Have a glass of port or a little whiskey?
No, thank you, Mr. Burling. I'm on duty.
You're new, aren't you?
Yes, only recently transferred.
I thought you must be. I was an alderman for years and Lord Mayor 2 years ago, and I'm still on the bench. So I know the Bromley police officers pretty well, and I thought I'd never seen you before.
Quite so.
Well, what can I do for you? Some trouble about a warrant?
No, Mr. Burling.
Well, what is it then?
I'd like some information, if you don't mind, Mr. Burling. 2 hours ago, a young woman died in the infirmary. She'd been taken there this afternoon because she swallowed a large amount of strong disinfectant. Burnt her insides out, of course.
My God.
Yes, she was in great agony. They did everything they could for her at the infirmary, but she died. Suicide, of course.
Yes, horrid business. But I don't understand why you should come here, Inspector.
I've been round to the room she had. She'd left a letter there, a sort of diary, Like a lot of these young women who get into various kinds of trouble, she used more than one name. But her original name, her real name, was Eva Smith.
Eva Smith?
Yes. Do you remember her, Mr. Burling?
No. I seem to remember hearing that name, Eva Smith, somewhere, but it doesn't convey anything to me. And I don't see where I come into this.
She was employed at your works at one time.
Oh, that's it, is it? Well, we've several hundred young women there, you know, and they keep changing.
This young woman, Eva Smith, was out of the ordinary. I found a photograph of her in the lodgings. Perhaps you can remember her from that.
No.
Any particular reason why I shouldn't see this girl's photograph, Inspector?
There might be.
The same applies to me, I suppose.
Yes.
I can't imagine what it could be.
Neither can I.
And I must say, I agree with them, Inspector.
It's the way I like to go to work. One person, one line of inquiry at a time. Otherwise there's a muddle.
I see. Sensible, really. You've had enough of that word, Eric.
I think you remember Eva Smith now, don't you, Mr. Burling?
Yes, I do. She was one of my employees, and then I discharged her.
Is that why she committed suicide?
Just keep quiet, Eric. Don't get excited. This girl left us nearly 2 years ago. Let me see. It must have been in the early autumn of 1910.
Yes, end of September 1910.
That's right.
Look here, sir. Wouldn't you rather I was out of this?
I don't mind you being here, Gerald. And I'm sure you've no objection, Inspector. Perhaps I ought to explain. This is Mr. Gerald Croft, the son of Sir George Croft. You know, Crofts Limited.
Mr. Gerald Croft, eh?
Yes, incidentally, we've been modestly celebrating his engagement to my daughter, Sheila.
I see. Mr. Croft is going to marry Miss Sheila Burling.
I hope so.
Then I prefer you to stay.
Oh, all right.
Look, there's nothing mysterious or scandalous about this business, at least not as far as I'm concerned. It's a perfectly straightforward case, and it happened more than 18 months ago, nearly 2 years. Obviously, it has nothing whatsoever to do with this wretched girl's suicide. Eh, Inspector?
No, sir, I can't agree with you there.
Why not?
Because what happened to her then may have determined what happened to her afterwards. And what happened to her afterwards may have driven her to suicide. A chain of events.
Oh well, put like that, there's something in what you say. Still, I can't accept any responsibility. If we were all responsible for everything that happened to everybody, we'd have a very difficult time. It would be very, very awkward, wouldn't it?
Yes, very awkward.
We'd all be in an impossible position, wouldn't we?
By Jove, yes. And as you were saying, Father, a man has to look after himself.
Yes, well, we needn't go into all that.
Go into what?
Oh, just before you came, I'd been giving them some little good advice. Now, about this girl, Eva Smith. I remember her quite well now. She was a lively, good-looking girl. Country-bred, I fancy. And she was been working in one of our machine shops for over a year. A good worker too. In fact, the foreman, he told me he was ready to promote her to what we call a leading operator, head of a small group of girls. But after they came back from their holidays that August, they were all rather restless, and they suddenly decided to ask for more money. They were averaging about 22 and 6 per week, which was neither more or less than is paid generally in our industry. They wanted the rates raised so that they could average 25 shillings a week. I refused, of course.
Why?
Did you say why?
Yes, why did you refuse?
Well, Inspector, I don't see that it's any concern of yours how I choose to run my business. Is it now?
It might be, you know.
I don't like that tone.
I'm sorry, but you asked me a question.
And you asked me a question before that, a quite unnecessary question too.
It's my duty to ask questions.
Well, it's my duty to keep labour costs down. And if I'd agreed to this demand for a new rate, we would have added about 12% to our labour cost. Does that satisfy you? So I refused. Said I couldn't consider it. We were paying the usual rates, and if they didn't like those rates, they could go and work somewhere else. It's a free country, I told them.
Well, it isn't as if they couldn't work somewhere else.
Quite so.
Look, you just keep out of this. You hadn't even started in the works when this happened. So they went on strike. That didn't last long, of course.
Not if it's just after the holidays. They'd all be broke. And I know that if I know them.
Right, Gerald, they mostly were. And so was the strike. After a week or two, pitiful affair. Well, we let them come back at the old rates, except the 4 or 5 ringleaders who'd started the trouble. I went down there myself and told them to clear out. And this girl, Eva Smith, was one of them. She'd had a lot to say. Far too much to say. She had to go.
You couldn't have done anything else.
Oh, he could have. He could have kept her on instead of throwing her out. Well, I call it tough luck.
Rubbish! If you don't come down on some of these people strongly, they'd soon be asking for the earth.
I should say so.
They might, but it is better to ask for the earth than to take it.
What did you say your name was, Inspector?
Gould, G-O-O-L-E.
How do you get on with our Chief Constable, Colonel Roberts?
I don't see much of him.
Perhaps I ought to warn you that he's an old friend of mine. And I see him fairly frequently. We play golf together sometimes at the West Bromley.
I don't play golf.
I didn't suppose you did.
Well, I think it's a damn shame.
No, I never wanted to play.
No, I mean about this girl, Eva Smith. Well, why shouldn't they try for a higher wage? We try for the highest possible prices. And, well, I don't see why she should have been sacked just because she had a bit more spirit than some of the others. Well, you said it yourself. She was a good worker, and I'd have let her stay on.
Unless you brighten your ideas up, you'll never be in a position to let anybody stay or to tell anybody to go. It's about time you learned to face a few responsibilities. That's something that public school and varsity life you've had doesn't seem to teach you.
Well, don't need to tell the inspector all about that, do we?
I don't see we need to tell the inspector anything more. In fact, there's nothing I can tell him. I told the girl to clear out, and she went. That's the last I heard of her. Have you any idea what happened to her after that? Get into trouble? Go on the streets?
She didn't exactly go on the street.
What's this about the streets? Oh, sorry, I didn't know. Mummy sent me to ask why you haven't come along to the drawing room.
We shall be along in a minute now. Just finishing.
I'm afraid not.
There's nothing else. I told you that.
What's all this about?
Nothing to do with you, Sheila. Run along. Come on.
No. Wait a minute, Miss Burling.
Now look here, Inspector. I consider this uncalled for and officious. I've a half a mind to report you. I told you all I know, and it doesn't seem to me to be very important. And now there isn't the slightest reason why my daughter should be dragged into this unpleasant business.
What business? What's happening?
I'm a police inspector, Miss Burling. This afternoon, a young woman drank some strong bleach and died after several hours of agony tonight in the infirmary.
Oh, how horrible. Was it an accident?
No, she wanted to end her life. She felt she couldn't go on any longer.
Well, don't tell me that's because I discharged her from my employment nearly 2 years ago.
But that might have started it.
Did you, Father?
Yes, the girl had been causing trouble in the works. I was quite justified.
Yes, I think you were. I know we'd have done the same thing. Don't look at me like that, Sheila.
Sorry. It's just that I can't help thinking about this girl destroying herself so horribly. And I've been so happy tonight. Oh, I wish you hadn't have told me. What was she like? Quite young?
Yes, 24.
Pretty?
She wasn't pretty when I saw her this afternoon, but she had been pretty, very pretty.
That's enough of that.
And I don't really see that this inquiry gets you anywhere, Inspector. It's what happened to her since she left Mr. Burling's works that's important.
Obviously, I suggested that some time ago.
And we can't help you there because we don't know.
Are you sure you don't know?
And are you suggesting that one of them knows something about this girl?
Yes.
You didn't come here then just to see me?
No?
Well, of course, if I'd have known that earlier, I wouldn't have called you officious and talked about it reporting you. You understand that, don't you, Inspector? I thought that, for some reason best known to yourself, you were making the most of this tiny bit of information. I'm sorry, this makes a difference. You sure of your facts?
Some of them, yes.
I can't think they can be of any great consequence.
The girl is dead, though.
What do you mean by saying that? You talk as if we were responsible.
Just a minute, Sheila. Now, Inspector, perhaps you and I had better go and talk this over in a quiet corner.
But why should you? He's finished with you. He says it's one of us now.
Yes, and I'm trying to settle it sensibly for you.
And there's nothing for me to settle as far as I'm concerned. I've never known an Eva Smith.
Well, neither have I.
Was that her name, Eva Smith?
Yes.
Well, I've never heard it before.
So, where are you now, Inspector?
Where I was before, Mr. Croft. I told you that, like a lot of these young women, she'd used more than one name. She was still Eva Smith when she left Burling and Company for wanting 25 shillings a week instead of 22 and 6. But after that, she stopped being Eva Smith. Perhaps she'd had enough of it.
I can't blame her.
I think it was a mean thing to do. Perhaps it spoilt everything for her.
Rubbish! Do you know what happened to this girl after she left my works?
Yes, she was out of work for the next 2 months. Both her parents were dead, so she'd no home to go back to. And she hadn't been able to save much out of what Burling and Company had paid her. So after 2 months with no work, no money coming in, and living in lodgings with no relatives to help her, few friends, lonely and desperate, she was feeling half-starved and desperate.
I should think so. It's a rotten shame.
There are a lot of young women living that sort of existence in every city and in every town in the country, Miss Burling. If there weren't, the factories and warehouses wouldn't know where to look for cheap labour. Ask your father.
But these girls aren't cheap labour. They're people.
Yes, I thought that myself many a time. In fact, I thought it would do us all good if sometimes we tried to put ourselves in the place of these young women, counting their pennies in their dingy little back bedrooms.
Yes, I expect it would. But what happened to her then?
Well, she had what seemed to her a wonderful stroke of luck. She was taken on in a shop, a good shop too at that, Millwoods.
Oh, Millwoods. We go there. In fact, I was there this afternoon. for your benefit.
Good.
Yes, she was lucky to be taken on at Millwoods.
That's what she thought. And it happened at the beginning of December that year, and 1910. There was a good deal of influenza about, and Millward suddenly found themselves short-handed, and they gave her a chance. Seems she liked working there. It was a nice change from the factory. She enjoyed being among pretty clothes, I've no doubt. And now she felt she was making a good fresh start. You could imagine how she felt.
Yes, of course.
And then she got herself into trouble there, I suppose.
After a couple of months, just when she felt she was settling down nicely, they told her she'd have to go.
Not doing her work properly?
There was nothing wrong with the way she was doing her work. They admitted that.
There must have been something wrong.
All she knew was that a customer complained about her and she had to go.
When was this?
At the end of January last year.
What did this girl look like?
If you will come over here, I'll show you.
What's the matter with her?
Well, she just recognised her from the photograph, didn't she?
Yes.
Why the devil do you want to go upsetting the child like that?
I didn't do it. She's upsetting herself.
Well, why? Why?
I don't know yet. That's something I have to find out.
Well, if you don't mind, I'll find out first.
Shall I go after her?
No. Leave this to me, Gerald. I must have a word with my wife and tell her what's happening. We were having such a fine celebration here tonight, and what a nasty mess you made of it now, haven't you?
That's more or less what I was thinking earlier tonight, Mr. Burling.
Thank you.
When I was in the infirmary, looking at what was left of Eva Smith. A nice little promising life. I thought that someone's made a nasty mess of it.
I'd like to have a look at that photograph, if you may.
All,
Please, Inspector.
all in good time.
But I don't see why. Why not?
You heard what I said before, Mr. Croft. One line of inquiry at a time. Otherwise we'll all be talking at once and we won't know where we are. If you've anything to tell me, you'll have an opportunity of doing it soon.
Well, I don't suppose I have.
I'm sorry, but you see, we were having a bit of a party here and, well, I've had a few drinks and rather a lot of champagne and I've got a headache and, well, I'm only in the way here, so, well, look, I think I'd better just go and turn in.
And I think you had better stay.
Oh, why should I?
It might be less trouble. If you turn in, you might have to turn out again.
Getting a bit heavy-handed, are we, Inspector?
Possibly. But if you're easy with me, I'm easy with you.
After all, you know, we're respectable citizens. We are not criminals.
Sometimes there isn't much difference as you think. Often, if it was left to me, I wouldn't know where to draw the line.
Fortunately, it isn't left to you.
No, it isn't. But some things are left to me. Inquiries of this sort, for instance. Well, Miss Burling?
You knew it was me all the time, didn't you?
I had an idea it might be from something the girl herself wrote.
I've told my father. He didn't seem to think it amounted to much, but I felt rotten about it all the time, and now I feel a lot worse. Did it make much difference to her?
Yes, I'm afraid it did. It was the last steady job that she had. When she lost it, for no reason that she could discover, she decided that she might try, well, another kind of life.
So I'm really responsible.
No, not really. A good deal happened to her after that, but you're partly to blame, just as your father is.
But what did Sheila do?
I went to the manager at Wim Millwoods and I told him that if they didn't get rid of that girl, I'd never go near the place again, and I'd persuade Mother to close our account with them.
And why did you do that?
Oh, because I was in a furious temper.
What has this girl done to make you lose your temper?
Well, when I was looking at myself in the mirror, I caught sight of her smiling at the assistant, and I was absolutely furious with her. I'd been in a bad temper anyhow.
And was it the girl's fault?
No, not really. It was my own fault. Oh, all right, Gerald, you needn't look at me like that. At least I'm trying to tell the truth. I expect you've done things you're ashamed of too.
Well, I never said I hadn't. I don't see why.
Never mind about that. You can settle that between yourselves afterwards. What happened?
I'd gone in to try something on. It was an idea of my own. Mother had been against it, and so had the assistant. But I insisted. As soon as I tried it on, I knew they were right. It just didn't suit me at all. I looked silly in the thing. Well, this girl had brought the dress up from the workroom, and when the assistant, Miss Francis, had asked her something about it, this girl, to show us what she meant, and she'd held the dress up as if she was wearing it, and it just suited her. She was the right type for it, just as I was the wrong type. She was very pretty too, with big dark eyes, and that didn't make it any better. Well, when I tried the thing on and looked at myself and knew it was all wrong, I caught sight of this girl smiling at Miss Francis as if to say, "Oh, doesn't she look awful?" And I was absolutely furious. I was very rude to both of them, and then I went to the manager and told him that this girl had been very impertinent, and oh, how could I know what would happen afterwards? If she'd been some miserable, plain little creature, I don't suppose I'd have done it. But she was very pretty and looked as if she could take care of herself. I couldn't feel sorry for her.
In fact, in a kind of way, you might be said to have been jealous of her.
Well, yes, I suppose so.
And so, you used the power you had, as a daughter of a good customer, and also of a man well known in the town, to punish the girl just because she made you feel like that.
Yes, but it didn't seem anything very terrible at the time. Don't you understand? And if I could help her now, I would.
Yes, but you can't. It's too late. She's dead.
My God, well, it's a bit thick when you come
Oh,
to think
shut
of it.
up, Eric. I know. It's the only time I've ever done anything like that, and I'll never do it to anyone again. I've noticed them giving me a sort of look at Millwoods. I noticed it even this afternoon, and I suppose some of them remember. I feel now I can never go there again. Oh, why had this to happen?
That's what I asked myself tonight when I was looking at the dead girl. And then I said to myself, well, we'll try to understand why it happened. And that's why I'm here, and why I'm not going to go until I know what happened. Eva Smith lost her job with Burling and Company because the strike failed, and they were determined not to have another one. At last she found another job. Under what name, I don't know. In a big shop, and had to leave there because you were annoyed with yourself and passed the annoyance on to her. Now, she had to try something else. So first she changed her name to Daisy Renton.
What?
I said she changed her name to Daisy Renton.
Do you mind if I have another drink?
Where is your father, Miss Burling?
He went into the drawing room to tell Mother what had happened. Eric, take the inspector along to the drawing room.
What, Sheila?
How did you come to know this girl, Eva Smith?
I didn't.
Well, Daisy Renton then, it's the same thing.
Why should I have had to know her?
Oh, don't be stupid, we haven't much time. You gave yourself away as soon as he mentioned her other name.
Oh, all right, I knew her. Let's leave it at that.
We can't leave it at that.
Now listen, darling.
No, it's no use. You not only knew her, but you knew her very well. Otherwise you wouldn't look so guilty about it. When did you first get to know her? Was it after she left Millwoods, when she changed her name, as she said, and began to lead a different sort of life? Were you seeing her last spring and summer, during that time you hardly came near me and said you were busy? Were you? Of course you were.
I'm sorry, Sheila, but it was all over and done with last summer. I hadn't set eyes on this girl for at least 6 months. I don't come into this suicide business.
Well, I thought I didn't until half an hour ago.
You don't. Neither of us do. So for God's sake, don't say anything to the inspector.
What, about you and this girl?
Yes, we can keep it from him.
Why, you fool! He knows! Of course he knows! And I hate to think how much he knows that we don't know yet. You'll see, you'll see.
Well,
You see, what did I tell you?
what did you tell him?
Inspector, I think Miss Burling ought to be excused any more of this questioning. She's nothing more to tell you. She's had a long, exciting and tiring day. We were celebrating our engagement, you know, and she's obviously had as much as she can stand. You heard her.
He means I'm getting hysterical now.
And are you?
Probably.
Well, I don't want to keep you here. I've no more questions to ask you.
No, but you haven't finished asking questions, have you?
No.
You see? Then I'm staying.
Why should you? It's bound to be unpleasant and disturbing.
And do you think that young women ought to be protected from unpleasant and disturbing things, eh?
If possible, yes.
Well, we all know one young woman who wasn't, don't we?
Well, I suppose I asked for that.
Be careful you don't ask for more, Gerald.
I only meant to say to you, why stay when you're hated?
It can't be any worse for me than it has been, and it might be better.
I see.
What do you see?
You've been through it, and now you want to see somebody else go through it.
Oh, so that's what you think I'm like. I'm glad I realised it in time, Gerald.
No, I didn't mean that.
Oh, yes, you did. And if you really loved me, you couldn't have said that. You listened to that nice story about me. I got that girl sacked from Millwoods. And now you've made up your mind, I must obviously be a selfish, vindictive woman.
I never said that, not even suggested it.
Then why say I want to see somebody else put through it? That's not what I mean at all.
All right then, I'm sorry.
Yes, but you don't believe me. And this is just the wrong time not to say you believe me.
Allow me, Miss Burling. I can tell you why Miss Burling wants to stay, and why she says it might be better for her if she did. A girl died tonight, a pretty, lively sort of girl who never did anybody any harm. But she died in misery and agony, hating life.
Oh, don't. I know, and I can't stop thinking about it.
And now Miss Burling has just been made to understand what she did to this girl. She feels responsible. And if she leaves now and doesn't hear any more, then she'll feel entirely to blame. She'll be alone with her responsibility. The rest of tonight, all tomorrow, and the next night.
Yes, that's it. And I know I'm to blame, and I'm desperately sorry. But I can't believe, I won't believe it's simply my fault that in the end she committed suicide. It would just be too horrible.
You see, we have to share something. If there's nothing else, we have to share our guilt.
Yes, that's true, you know. I don't understand about you.
There's no reason why you should.
Good evening, Inspector.
Good evening, madam.
I'm Mrs. Burling, you know. My husband has just explained why you're here. While we'll be happy to answer any of your questions, I really fail to see how we can help you at all.
No, Mother, please.
What do you mean, Sheila?
I know it sounds silly.
What does?
You see, I feel you're beginning all wrong, and I'm afraid you'll say or do something that you'll be sorry for afterwards.
I don't know what you're talking about, Sheila.
We all started like that, so confident, so pleased with ourselves, until he began to ask questions.
You seem to have made a great impression on this young woman.
We often do with the young ones. They're more impressionable.
You're looking tired, my dear. I think you ought to go to bed and forget about all this absurd business. You'll feel better in the morning.
Mother, I couldn't possibly go. Nothing could be worse for me. We've settled all that. I'm staying here until I know why that girl killed herself.
Nothing but morbid curiosity.
No, it isn't.
Oh, please don't contradict me like that. And in any case, I don't suppose for a moment we can understand why this girl committed suicide, a girl of that class.
Oh, Mother, don't. Please don't. For your own sake as well as ours, you mustn't.
Mustn't? What? Really, Sheila?
You mustn't try to build up a kind of wall between us and that girl. If you do, then the inspector will just break it down. And it'll be all more the worse if he does.
I don't understand you at all. Do you, Inspector?
Yes, and she's right.
I beg your pardon?
I said yes, I understand her, and she's right.
That I consider is a trifle impertinent, Inspector. Now what is it, Sheila?
Well, I don't know. Perhaps it's because impertinent is such a silly word.
In any case...
But, Mother, do stop before it's too late.
If you mean that the Inspector will take offence...
No, I never take offence.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. Although I have to say that I think that we are the people who are most likely to take offence.
Let's leave offence out of it, shall we?
Yes, I think we'd better.
And so do I.
If you don't mind, I'm talking to the Inspector now. I realise that you may have to conduct some sort of inquiry, Inspector, but I must say that so far you seem to be conducting it in a rather peculiar and offensive manner. You know, of course, that my husband was Lord Mayor 2 years ago, and that he's still a magistrate.
Mrs. Burling, the inspector knows all that, and I don't think it's a very good idea to remind him.
It's crazy. Stop it, please, Mother.
Yes. Now, what about Mr. Burling?
He's coming back in a moment. He's just talking to my son, Eric, who seems to be in an excitable, silly mood.
What's the matter with him?
Oh, Eric? I'm afraid he may have had rather too much to drink tonight. We were having a little celebration here.
Isn't he used to drinking?
Of course not. He's just a boy.
He's a young man. And some young men drink far too much.
And Eric's one of them.
Sheila!
I don't want to get poor Eric into trouble. He's probably in enough trouble already. But we really must stop these silly pretences. This isn't the time to pretend that Eric isn't used to drink. He's been steadily drinking too much for the last 2 years.
It isn't true. You know him, Gerald, and you're a man. You must know it isn't true.
Well, Mr. Croft?
Mrs. Burling, I'm afraid it is, you know. Actually, I've never seen much of him outside this house, but, well, I have gathered that he does drink pretty hard.
This is the time you choose to tell me.
Well, yes, of course it is. It's what I mean when I talked about building up a wall that's sure to be knocked flat. It makes it all the harder to bear.
But it's you, not the Inspector, who's doing it.
Yes, but don't you see? He hasn't started on you yet.
If necessary, I shall be glad to answer any questions the Inspector wishes to ask me. Though naturally I know nothing at all about this girl.
We'll see, Mrs. Burling.
Inspector, I've been trying to persuade Eric to go to bed, but he won't. Now he says you told him to stay up. Did you?
Yes, I did.
Why?
Because I shall want to talk to him, Mr. Burling.
I can't see why you should, but if you must, I suggest then that you do it now. Have him in and get it over and done with, and then let my boy go.
No, I can't do that yet. I'm sorry, but he'll have to wait.
Now look here, Inspector.
He must wait his turn.
You see?
No, I don't. And please be quiet, Sheila.
Inspector, I told you before, I don't like the tone nor the way you're handling this inquiry. And I won't give you much rope.
You needn't give me any rope.
No, he's giving us the rope so that we can hang ourselves.
What's the matter with this child?
Oh, overexcited. And she refuses to go. Well, come along. What is it you want to know?
At the end of January last year,
It's no use, Gerald. You're wasting time.
as soon as I mentioned the name Daisy Renton, it was obvious you knew her. You gave yourself away at once.
Of course he did.
And anyhow, I knew already. When and where did you first meet her?
All right, if you must have it. I met her first sometime in March last year, in the stalls bar at the Palace. I mean the Palace Music Hall here in Bromley.
Well, we didn't think you meant Buckingham Palace.
Thanks, you're going to be a great help. I can see. You said your piece, and you're obviously going to hate this, so why on earth don't you leave us to it?
Nothing would induce me. I want to understand exactly what happens when a man says he's so busy at his works that he can hardly ever find time to come and see the girl he's supposed to be in love with. I wouldn't miss it for all the world.
Yes, Mr. Croft, in the bar at the Palace Variety Theatre.
I happened to look in one night, after a long dull day, and as the show wasn't very bright, I went down into the bar for a drink. It's a favourite haunt of women of the town.
Women of the town?
Yes, but I see no point in mentioning this subject especially.
It would be much better if Sheila didn't listen to this story at all.
But you're forgetting I'm supposed to be engaged to the hero. Go on, Gerald, who went down to the bar, which is a favourite haunt of the women of the town.
I'm glad I amuse you.
Come along, Mr. Croft. What happened?
I didn't propose to stay down there long. I hate those doe-eyed women. Then I noticed a girl who looked quite different. She was very pretty, soft brown hair and dark, big eyes. My God.
What's the matter?
Sorry, well, I've suddenly realised I'm taking it in. Well, she's dead.
Yes, she's dead.
And probably between us, we killed her.
Oh, Sheila. Don't talk nonsense.
You wait, Mother.
Go on, Mr. Croft.
She looked young and fresh and charming and altogether out of place down there. And obviously she wasn't enjoying herself. Old Joe Meggerty, half-drunk and google-eyed, wedged himself and her in a corner with that obscene fat carcass of hers.
There's no need to be disgusting. And surely you don't mean Alderman Meggerty?
Of course I do.
Oh.
He's a notorious womanizer, as well as being one of the worst sots and rogues in Bromley.
Quite right.
Oh, well, really, Alderman Meggerty. Oh, I must say we're learning something tonight.
Oh, of course we are. But everybody knows about that horrible old Meggerty. A girl I know had to see him at the town hall one afternoon, and she only escaped with a torn blouse.
Sheila!
Go on, please.
And the girl saw me looking at her, and she gave me a glance that was nothing less than a cry for help. So I went across and told Joe Meggerty, it was some nonsense, like the manager had his message for him or something like that, and got it out of the way. And then told the girl that if she didn't want any more of that, she should come with me. So I took her out, and she agreed at once.
Where did you go?
We went along to the county hotel, which I knew would be quiet at that time of night, and we had a drink or two, and we talked.
Did she drink much at the time?
No, she only had a port and lemonade or some such concoction. All she wanted to do was to talk. A little friendliness. So I gathered that Meggerty's advances had left her somewhat shaken, as well they might.
She talked about herself.
Yes, I asked her questions about herself. She told me her name was Daisy Renton, that she'd lost both her parents, and she originally came from outside Bromley. She also told me that she had a job in one of the works here and had to leave after a strike. She said something about the shop too, but wouldn't say what it was and how it happened. And I couldn't get any exact details from her about herself, just because she felt I was interested and friendly. But at the same time, she wanted to be Daisy Renton and not Eva Smith. In fact, I heard that name for the first time tonight. What she did let slip, though she didn't mean to, was that she was desperately hard up at that moment and was actually hungry. So I made the people at the county hotel find her some food for her.
And then you decided to keep her as your mistress?
What?
Well, of course, Mother. It was obvious from the start. Oh, go on, Gerald. Don't mind Mother.
I discovered, not that night, but 2 nights later when we met, not accidentally this time, that in fact she hadn't a penny to her name and was going to be turned out of the miserable back room she had. And it so happened that a friend of mine, Charlie Brunswick, had gone off to Canada for 6 months, and he'd let me have the key of a nice little set of rooms that he had in Morgan Terrace. And he asked me to look after them for him and use them if I wanted to. So I insisted on Daisy moving into those rooms, and I made her take some money to keep her going there. I want you to understand, Inspector, I didn't install her there so I could make love to her. I made her go to Morgan Terrace because I was sorry for her and I didn't like the idea of her going back to the Palace Bar, and I didn't ask for anything in return.
I see.
Yes. But why are you saying that to him? You ought to be saying it to me.
I suppose I ought to, really. I'm sorry, Sheila. Somehow...
I know. Somehow he makes you.
But she became your mistress.
Yes, I suppose it was inevitable. She was young and pretty and warm-hearted and intensely grateful. I became at once the most important person in her life. You understand?
Yes, she was a woman. She was lonely. Were you in love with her?
Oh, just what I was going to ask.
I really must protest.
Why should you do any protesting? It was you who turned the girl out in the first place.
Well, I only did what any employer might have done. And as a father, I do not see why my daughter, a young unmarried girl, is being dragged into this.
Your daughter isn't on the moon. She's here in Bromley too.
Yes, and it was I who had the girl turned out of her job at Millwoods. And I'm supposed to be engaged to Gerald. And I'm not a child, don't forget. I've a right to know. Were you in love with her, Gerald?
It's hard to say. I didn't feel about her as she felt about me.
Oh, of course not. You were the wonderful fairy prince. You must have adored it, Gerald.
All right, I did. I did for a time. Nearly any man would have.
That's probably about the best thing you said tonight. At least it's honest. And did you go and see her every night?
No. I wasn't telling you a complete lie when I said I was very busy at the works all the time. We were very busy. But of course, I did see a good deal of her.
I don't think we want any more disgusting details of this affair.
Oh, I do. And anyhow, we haven't had any details yet.
And you're not going to have any. You know, it wasn't disgusting.
It's disgusting to me.
Yes, but after all, you didn't come into this, did you, Mother?
Is there anything else you want to know that you ought to know?
Yes. When did this affair end?
I can tell you exactly. It was the first week of September. I had to go away for several weeks then on business, and by then Daisy knew it was coming to an end. So I broke it off definitely before I went.
How did she take it?
Better than I hoped. She was very gallant about it.
Oh, that was very nice for you.
No, it wasn't. She told me she'd been happier than she had ever been before, but she knew it couldn't last, hadn't expected to last. She didn't blame me at all. I wish to God she had now. Perhaps I'd feel better about it.
She had to move out of those rooms.
Yes, we'd agreed about that. She'd saved a little money during the summer. She'd lived very economically on what I allowed her and didn't want to take more money from me, but I insisted on a parting gift of enough money, though it wasn't very much, to see her through to the end of the year.
Did she tell you what she proposed to do after that?
No. She refused to talk about that. I got the idea once or twice, what she said, that she thought of leaving Bromley. Whether she did or not, I don't know. Did she?
Yes, she went away for about 2 months to some seaside place.
By herself?
Yes, I think she went away to be alone, to be quiet, to remember all that had happened between you two.
How do you know that?
She kept a rough sort of diary and said that she had to go away and be quiet and remember, just to make it last longer. She felt there'd never be anything as good for her again, so she had to make it last longer.
I see. Well, I never saw her again, and that's all I can tell you.
It's all I want to know from you.
Well, in that case, as I'm rather more upset by this business than I probably appear to be, and well, I'd like to be alone for a while, and I'd be very glad if you let me go.
Go where? Home?
No, I'll just go out, walk about for a while, if you don't mind. I'll come back.
All right, Mr. Croft.
But just in case you forget or decide not to come back, Gerald, I think you'd better take this with you.
I see. Well, I was expecting this.
I don't dislike you as much as I did half an hour ago, Gerald. In fact, in an odd way, I rather respect you more than I've ever done before. I knew anyhow that you were lying about those months last year when you hardly ever came near me. I knew there was something fishy about that time, and now at least you've been honest. And I believe what you told us about the way you helped her at first, just out of pity. And it was my fault, really, that she was so desperate when you first met her. But this has made a difference. You and I aren't the same people who sat down to dinner here. We'll have to start all over again, getting to know one another.
Now, Sheila, I'm not defending him, but you must understand that a lot of young men...
Oh, don't interfere, please, Father.
Yes,
Gerald knows what I mean, and you apparently don't.
Yes, I know what you mean. But I'm coming back, if I may.
Well, all right.
Well, really, I don't know. I think we've just about come to an end of this wretched business, Gerald.
I don't think so. Excuse me.
You know, Inspector, you never showed him that photograph.
No, it wasn't necessary, and I thought I'd better not to.
You have a photograph of this girl.
Yes, I think you'd better look at it.
I don't see any particular reason why I should.
Perhaps not, but you'd better look at it.
Very well.
You recognise her?
No. Why should I?
Of course, she might have changed lately, but I don't believe she could have changed that much.
I don't understand you, Inspector.
You mean you choose not to, Mrs. Burling?
I meant what I said.
You are not telling the truth.
I beg your pardon.
I said you're not telling me the truth.
Look here, I'm not going to have this, Inspector. You will apologise at once.
Apologise for what? Doing my duty?
No, for being offensive about it. I'm a public man.
Public men, Mr. Burling, have responsibilities as well as privileges.
Well, possibly. But But you weren't asked to come here to talk about my responsibilities.
Well, let's hope not, though I'm beginning to wonder.
Does that mean anything, Sheila?
It means that we've no excuse now for putting on airs and graces. If we've any sense, we won't try. Father threw this girl out because she asked for decent wages. I went and pushed her further out, right into the street, just because I was angry and she was pretty. Gerald set her up as his mistress and then dropped her when it suited him. And now you're pretending you don't recognise her from that photograph. I admit I don't know why you should, but I jolly well know in fact you did recognise her by the way you looked. And if you're not telling the truth, why should the inspector apologise? And can't you see, both of you, that you're making it worse?
That must have been Eric.
Oh, Gerald must have come back.
Yes, and I called out on both landings. It must have been Eric who we heard go out then.
Unless Eric has gone out.
Yes, yes.
You'd better see Mr. Bowling.
I can't imagine, but he was in one of his excitable, queer moods. And even though we don't need him here,
Mrs. Burling, you remember a prominent member of the Bromley Women's Charity Organisation, aren't you?
Go on, Mother, you might as well admit it. Yes, she is. Why?
It's an organisation to which women in distress can appeal for help in various forms. Isn't that so?
Yes, we've done a great deal of useful work for deserving cases.
There was a meeting of the committee 2 weeks ago.
I dare say there was.
You know very well there was, Mrs. Burling. You were in the chair.
And if I was, what business is it of yours?
Do you want me to tell you in plain words?
That must have been Eric. Have you been up to his room?
yes, and I called out on both landings. It must have been Eric who heard go out then.
Silly boy, where can he have gone to?
I can't imagine, but he was in one of his excitable, queer moods. And even though we don't need him here...
We do need him here, and if he's not back soon, I shall have to go and find him.
Oh, he's probably just gone to cool off. He'll be back soon.
I hope so.
And why should you hope so?
I'll explain when you've answered my questions, Mrs. Burling.
Is there any reason why my wife should answer questions from you, Inspector?
Yes, a very good reason. You'll remember that Mr. Croft told us, quite truthfully I believe, that he hadn't spoken to Eva Smith since last September. But Miss Burling spoke to and saw her only 2 weeks ago.
Mother?
Is this true?
Yes, quite true.
She appealed to your organisation for help,
Yes.
not as Eva Smith.
No, nor as Daisy Renton.
As what then?
Well, first she called herself Mrs. Burling.
Mrs. Burling?
Yes. It was a piece of gross impertinence, quite deliberate. And naturally, it was one of the things that made me prejudiced against her case.
And I should think so. Damned impudence.
You admit being prejudiced against her case?
Yes.
Oh, Mother, she just died a horrible death, don't forget.
I'm very sorry, but I think she only had herself to blame.
Was it, owing to your influence as the most prominent member of the committee, that help was refused this girl?
Possibly.
Was it or was it not your influence?
Yes, it was. I didn't like her manner. She'd impertinently made use of our name, though she pretended afterwards that it was the first name she'd thought of. She had to admit, after I began questioning her, that her first story, that she was married and that her husband had deserted her was quite false. She wasn't married. It didn't take me long to get to the truth, or some of the truth.
Why did she want help?
You know very well why she wanted help.
No, I don't. I know why she needed help. But as I wasn't there, I don't know what she had.
I don't think
Your
we
committee.
need to discuss it.
You have no hope of not discussing it, Mrs. Burling?
If you think you can bring any pressure to bear on me, you're quite mistaken, Inspector. Because unlike the other three, I did nothing that I'm ashamed of, or that won't bear investigation. The girl asked for assistance. We are asked to look very carefully at the cases and the claims made upon us. I wasn't satisfied with this girl's claim. She seemed to me not to be a good case. And I used my influence to have it refused, to have that claim refused. And in spite of what's happened to the girl, I consider I did my duty. So, if I prefer not to discuss it any further, you have no power to make me change my mind.
Yes, I have.
No, you haven't. Simply because I've done nothing wrong. And you know it.
I think you did something terribly wrong, and that you're going to spend the rest of your life regretting it. I wish you'd been with me in the infirmary tonight. You'd have seen...
Oh, no, please, not that again. I've imagined enough already.
Now, the next time you imagine it, just remember that this girl was going to have a child.
No. Oh, horrible, horrible. How could she have wanted to kill herself?
Because she'd been turned down and turned out too many times. This was the end.
Mother, you must have known.
It was because she was going to have a child that she went for assistance to your mother's committee.
Look here, this wasn't Gerald Croft.
No, nothing to do with him.
Thank goodness for that, though I don't know why I should care now.
And, Mrs. Burling, you've nothing further to tell me, eh?
I'll tell you what I told her. Go and look for the father of the child. It's his responsibility.
That doesn't make it any less yours. She came to you for help at a time when a woman needed help, and you refused. And you saw to it that not only you, but the others refused it too. She was here alone, friendless, almost penniless, desperate. She needed not only money, but advice, sympathy, friendliness. You've had children. You must have known what she was feeling. And you slammed the door in her face.
Mother, I think it was cruel and vile.
I must say, Sybil, that when this comes out at the inquest, it isn't going to do us much good. The press might easily take it...
Oh, stop it, you two, both of you. And please remember, before you start accusing me of anything again, it wasn't I who turned her out of her employment, which probably began it all. In the circumstances, I think I was justified. The girl had begun by telling us a pack of lies. Afterwards, when I got at the truth, I discovered she knew who the father was. She was quite certain about that. And so I told her it was her business to make him responsible. If he refused to marry her, and in my opinion he ought to be compelled to, then he must at least support her.
And what did she reply to that?
Oh, a lot of nonsense.
What was it?
Whatever it was, it made me finally lose all patience with her. She was giving herself ridiculous airs. She was claiming fine feelings and scruples that were simply absurd in a girl in her position.
Her position now is that she lies on a slab with a burnt out inside. Don't stammer and yammer at me, man. I'm losing all patience with you people. What did she say?
She said the father was only a youngster. silly and wild and drinking too much. There couldn't be any question of marrying him. It would be wrong for them both. He had given her money, but she didn't want to take any more money from him.
Why didn't she want to take any more money from
Oh,
him?
all a lot of nonsense. I didn't believe a word
I'm not asking if you believed it. I want to know what she said. Why didn't she want to take any more money from this boy?
Oh, she had some fancy reason. As if a girl of that sort would ever refuse money.
I warn you, you're making it worse for yourself. What reason did she give for not wanting to take any more money?
Her story was that he'd said something one night when he was drunk that gave her the idea that it wasn't his money.
Where had he got it from then?
He'd stolen it.
So she came to you for assistance because she didn't want to take stolen money.
Well, that's the story she finally told, after I'd refused to believe her original story, that she was a married woman who'd been deserted by her husband. I didn't see any reason to believe the one story should be any truer than the other. Therefore, you're quite wrong to suspect that I'm sorry for what I did, or that I shall regret it.
But if her story was true, and if this boy had been giving her stolen money, then she came to you for help, because she wanted to keep this youngster out of any more trouble.
Oh,
Isn't that so?
Possibly. But it sounded ridiculous to me. So I was perfectly justified in advising my committee not to allow her claim for assistance.
You are not even sorry now, when you know what happened to the girl.
Well, I'm sorry she should have come to such a horrible end, but I accept no blame for it at all.
Who is to blame then?
First, the girl herself.
For letting father and me have her chucked out of her jobs.
Secondly, I blame the young man who was the father of the child she was going to have. If, as she said, he didn't belong to her class and was some drunken young idler, then that's all the more reason why he shouldn't escape. He should be made an example of. If the girl's death is due to anybody, then it's due to him.
And if her story is true, that he was stealing money.
Well, there's no point in assuming that.
But suppose we do, what then?
Well, then he'd be entirely responsible, because the girl wouldn't have come to us and have been refused assistance if it hadn't been for him.
So he's the chief culprit now.
Oh, certainly. And he ought to be dealt with very severely.
Mother, stop.
Be quiet, Sheila.
But don't you see?
Oh, you're behaving like a hysterical child tonight. And if you take some steps to find this young man, and then make sure that he's compelled to confess in public his responsibility, instead of staying here asking quite unnecessary questions, then you really would be doing your duty.
Don't worry, Mrs. Burling, I shall do my duty.
I'm very glad to hear it.
So, no hushing up, eh? Make an example of the young man, eh? Public confession of responsibility.
Certainly. I consider it your duty. And now, no doubt, you'd like to say good night.
Not yet. I'm waiting
Waiting for what?
to do my duty.
Now, Mother, don't you see?
But surely, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Look, Inspector, you're not trying to tell us that my boy is mixed up in this?
If he is, we shall know what to do, won't we? Mrs. Burling has just told us.
My God. But look here.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
Mother, I begged you and begged you to stop.
Eric, I can't believe it. There must be some mistake. You don't know what we've been saying.
It's a good job for him he doesn't, isn't it?
Why?
because Mother's been busy blaming everything on the young man who got this girl into trouble and saying he shouldn't escape and should be made an example of.
That's enough, Sheila.
Well, you haven't made it any easier for me, have you, Mother?
But I didn't know it was you. I never dreamt. Besides, you're not the type. You don't get drunk.
Oh, of course he does. I told you he did.
Oh, you told her, you little sneak!
No, that's not fair, Eric. I could have told her months ago, but of course I didn't. I only told her tonight because I knew everything was coming out. It was simply bound to come out tonight, so I thought she might as well know in advance. Don't forget, I've already been through.
Oh, Sheila, I really don't understand your attitude.
Neither do I. If you'd had any sense of loyalty...
Just a minute, Mr. Burling. There'll be plenty of time when I've gone for you all to adjust your family relationships. But now I must hear what your son has to tell me. And I'd be obliged if you let us get on without any further interruptions.
Do you think I could have a drink first?
No.
Yes, I know he's your son and this is your house, but just look at him. He needs a drink now just to get him through.
All right, go on then. I understand a lot of things now I didn't understand before.
Don't start on that, I want to get on. When did you first meet this girl?
Oh, one night last November.
Where did you meet her?
In the Palace Bar. I'd been there an hour or two with some of my friends and, well, I was a bit tiggly.
When did you meet her?
Well, I began talking to her, you know, and I had a few drinks and, well, I was rather far gone by the time it was time to go.
And was she drunk too?
Well, she told me afterwards that she was a bit, chiefly because she hadn't had much to eat that night.
Why had she gone there?
Well, she wasn't the usual sort, you know, but, well, I suppose, well, she didn't know what to do, and there was some woman who wanted to take her and help her get there, and I just didn't understand all about that.
So you went with her to her lodgings that night?
Yes. Well, I insisted, it seems. Well, I'm not very clear about it, but afterwards she told me that, well, that she didn't want me to go, and, well, you know, I was in that sort of state when a chap can turn nasty, and I threatened to make a row.
So she let you in?
Yes. Well, and that's when it happened. I didn't remember. Well, that's the hellish thing. Oh, how stupid it all is.
Eric, how could you?
Sheila, take your mother along to the drawing room.
But I want to stay here.
You heard what I said.
Oh, come along.
Come on, Sybil, come on.
Come along, Mother.
Off you go.
When did you meet her again?
About a fortnight afterwards.
By appointment?
No, I couldn't remember her name or where she lived. It was all rather vague, but, well, I met her again in the Palace Bar.
More drinks?
Yes, but I wasn't so bad this time.
But you took her home again?
Yes, and this time we talked a bit, and, well, she talked a bit about herself, and I talked, and, well, I told her my name and what I did.
And you made love again?
Yes, but I wasn't in love with her or anything, but, well, I liked her. She was pretty and a good sport and all.
So you had to go to bed with her?
Well, I'm old enough to be married, aren't I? And I'm not married. And I hate those fat old touts around this town, the ones I see your respectable friends going out with all the time.
I don't want any of that talk from you, Eric.
I don't want any from you either. Settle it afterwards.
Yes.
Did you arrange to see each other after that?
Oh, well, the next time, or maybe the time after that, well, she told me she thought she was going to have a baby. Well, she wasn't quite sure, and then she was.
And of course she was very worried about it.
Yes, and so was I. I was in a hell of a state.
Did she suggest that you should marry her?
No, she didn't want me to marry her. Said I didn't love her and all that sort of thing, and in a way, well, she treated me as if I was a kid, though I was nearly as old as she was.
So what did you propose to do?
Well, she hadn't a job and didn't feel like trying again for one, and she'd no money left, so I insisted on giving her enough money to keep her going. Well, until she refused to take any more, that was.
How much did you give her altogether?
Oh, I suppose about £50.
£50? On top of drinking and going around the town? Where did you get £50 from?
That is my question too.
Oh, I got it from the office.
My office?
Yes.
You mean you stole the money?
Not really.
What do you mean, not really?
This isn't my fault.
I'm sorry, Arthur. I simply couldn't stay in there. Oh, I must know what's happening.
Well, I can tell you what's happening. He's admitted he was responsible for the girl's condition. And now he's telling us he supplied her with money stolen from my office.
Oh, you stole money?
No, not really. I intended to pay it back.
We've heard that story before. How could you pay it back?
Well, I'd have managed somehow, but had to have some money.
I don't understand how you could take as much as that out of the office without somebody knowing.
Well, there were some small accounts to collect and, well, I asked for cash.
Ah, gave the firm's receipt and then kept the money, eh?
Yes.
You must give me a list of those accounts. I've got to cover this up as soon as I can, you damned fool. Why didn't you come to me when you found yourself in this mess?
Because, well, you're not the sort of father a chap can go to when he's in trouble. That's why.
Don't talk to me like that. Your trouble is you have been spunt.
And my trouble is that I haven't much time. You'll be able to divide the responsibility between you when I've gone. Just one last question, that's all. The girl discovered that this money you were giving her was stolen, didn't she?
Yes, well, that was the worst of all. She wouldn't take any more and she didn't want to see me again. And hang on, how did you know that? Did she tell you?
No, she told me nothing. I never spoke to her.
She told Mother.
Sheila?
Well, he has to know.
She told you? Did she come here? But she couldn't have done. She didn't even know where I lived. What happened? Come on, don't just look like that. Tell me what happened.
I'll tell you. She went to your mother's committee for help after she'd done with you, and your mother refused that help.
Then you killed her. She came to you to protect me, and you turned her away. Yes, and you killed her. And the child she was going to have, my child, your own grandchild. You've killed them both. Oh, damn you!
No, anybody! I didn't know! I didn't understand!
Oh, Eric, don't.
Why, you hysterical young fool, get back or I'll...
Stop! And be quiet for a moment and listen to me. I don't need to know anymore. Neither do you. This girl killed you herself. She died a horrible death. But each of you helped to kill her. Remember that. Never forget it. But I don't think you ever will. Remember what you did, Mrs. Burling? You turned her away when she most needed help. You've refused her even the pitiable little bit of organised charity you had in your power to grant her. Remember what you did.
Oh, my God. I'm not likely to forget.
And you used her for the end of a stupid drunken evening. As if she was an animal, a thing, not a person. No, you won't forget.
I know. I had her turned out of a job. I started it.
You helped. but you didn't start it. Mr. Burling, you started it. She wanted 25 shillings a week instead of 22 and sixpence. You made her pay a heavy price for that, and now she'll make you pay a heavier price still.
Look, Inspector, I'd give thousands, thousands.
You're offering the money at the wrong time, Mr. Burling. No, I don't think any of you will forget. Nor that young man, Mr. Croft, though at least he had some affection for her and made her happy for a while. Well, Eva Smith has gone. You can't do her any more harm, and you can't do her any good either. You can't even say, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Eva Smith."
That's the worst of it.
But just remember this. One Eva Smith has gone, but there are millions and millions of Eva Smiths and John Smiths still left with us, with their lives, their hopes and fears, their sufferings and their chance of happiness, all intertwined with our lives. What we think and say and do, we don't live alone. We are members of one body. We are responsible for each other. And I tell you that the time will come soon if men will not learn that lesson, then they will be taught it in fire and anguish. I bid you good night.
Yes, and you don't realise yet all you've done. More of this is bound to come out. There'll be a public scandal.
Well, I don't care now.
You don't seem to care about anything, but I care. I was almost certainly on for a knighthood in the next honours list.
Oh my God! What does it matter now whether or not you get a knighthood? Oh dear.
It doesn't matter to you, apparently. Nothing matters to you, but it may interest you to know that until every penny of that money you stole is repaid, you work for nothing. And there's no going to be drinking around the town and picking up women in the palace bar.
I should think not, Eric. I'm absolutely ashamed of you.
Well, you know, I don't blame you, but don't forget, I'm ashamed of you. Yes, both of you.
Drop that. There's every excuse for what your mother and I did. It turned out unfortunately, that's all.
That's all?
Well, what have you to say?
Well, I don't know where to begin.
Then don't begin. Nobody wants you to.
I behaved badly too. I know what I did and I'm ashamed of it. But now, you're beginning all over again to pretend nothing much has happened.
Nothing much has happened. Haven't I already said there'll be a public scandal, unless we're lucky? And who will suffer more from that than me?
But that's not what I'm talking about. I don't care about that. The point is, you don't seem to have learnt anything.
Don't I? Well, you're quite wrong. I've learned plenty, and you don't want me to tell you what I've learned, I hope. When I look back on tonight, when I think of what I was feeling when the five of us sat down at this dinner table.
Yes, but do you remember what you told Gerald and me after dinner? When you were feeling so pleased with yourself, you told us that a man has to make his own way, look after himself, mind his own business, and that we weren't to take any notice of those cranks that'll go around telling you everybody has to look after everybody else. As if we're all mixed up in it together. Do you remember all that? Well then, one of those cranks comes in, the inspector. Well, I didn't notice you telling him it was every man for himself.
Is that when the inspector came? Just after Father had said that?
Yes. What of it?
Now what's the matter, Sheila?
Well, it's queer. Very queer.
I know what you're going to say. Because I've been wondering myself.
It doesn't much matter now, of course. But was he really a police inspector?
Well, if he wasn't, it matters a devil of a lot. Makes all the difference.
No, it doesn't.
Don't talk rubbish. Of course it does.
Well, it doesn't to me, and it oughtn't to you either.
Oh, don't be so childish,
I'm
Sheila.
not being. If you want to know, it's you two who are being childish, trying not to face the facts.
I won't have any more of that talk. Any more of it, and you'll have to leave the room.
Well, that'll be terrible for her, won't it?
I'm going anyway in a minute or two. But don't you see, if all that's come out of tonight is true, then it doesn't much matter who it was who made us confess. And it was true, wasn't it? You turned the girl out of the job, and I turned her out of another. Gerard kept her at a time when he was supposed to be too busy to see me and Eric. Well, we all know what Eric did. And Mother hardened her hearth and gave her the final push that finished her. That's what's important, and not whether the man was a police inspector or not.
He was a police inspector, all right.
That's what I mean, Eric. But if it's any comfort to you, and it wasn't to me, I have an idea, and I had it all along, vaguely, that there was something curious about him. He never seemed like an ordinary police inspector.
You're right. I felt it too. Didn't you, Sybil?
I must say his manner was quite extraordinary. He was so rude, so assertive.
Then, look at the way he talked to me, telling me to shut up and so on. He must have known I was an ex-Lord Mayor and a magistrate and so forth. Besides, the way he talked, you remember? I mean, they don't talk like that. I've had dealings with dozens of them.
Oh, all right. But it doesn't make any difference, you know.
Well, Sheila's right, of course. It doesn't.
That's comic, that is, coming from you. You're the one it makes most difference to. You've confessed to theft, and now he knows all about it, and can bring it out at the inquest, and then, if necessary, carry it on to the court. He can't do anything to your mother or Sheila and me, except perhaps make us look a little ashamed of ourselves in public. But as for you, he can ruin you.
We hardly ever told him anything he didn't know. Did you notice that?
That's nothing. He had a bit of information left by the girl and made a few smart guesses. But the fact remains that if we hadn't talked so much, he'd have had little to go on. And really, when you come to think of it, why you all had to go letting everything come out like that beats me.
Well, it's all right talking like that now. But he made us confess.
He certainly didn't make me confess, as you call it. I told him quite plainly that I thought I'd done no more than my duty.
Oh, Mother.
The fact is, you allowed yourself to be bluffed. Yes, bluffed.
Oh, now really, Arthur?
No, not you, my dear, but these two. That fellow obviously didn't like us. He was prejudiced from the start. Probably a socialist or some sort of crap. He talked like one. And then instead of standing up to him, you let him bluff you into talking about your private affairs. You ought to have stood up to him.
Well, I didn't notice you standing up to him.
No, because by the time you'd admitted you'd been taking the money, what chance had I after that? I was a fool to have insisted upon seeing him alone.
Well, that wouldn't have worked.
Of course it wouldn't.
Oh, really, from the way you children talk, you might be wanting to help him rather than us. I'd just be quiet and let your father decide what we ought to do.
Yes, well, we'll have to do something and get to work quickly too. Now, who's this? Had I better go?
Oh, no, Eleanor, go. I asked her to wait up and make us some tea.
Well, it might be Gerald coming back.
Yes, of course. I'd forgotten about him.
I hope you don't mind my coming back.
Oh, Gerald.
I had a special reason for coming. When did that inspector go?
Only a few minutes ago. He He put us all through it.
Sheila.
Gerald might as well know.
How did he behave?
Oh, all right, but we're all in it, right up to the neck. It got worse after you left.
You sure?
He was really, really frightening.
Very strange.
If you ask me, he behaved in a very peculiar and suspicious manner.
Yes, the rude way he spoke to Mr. Burling and me. It was quite extraordinary.
Yes.
You know something?
That man wasn't a police officer.
What?
Are you certain?
I'm almost certain. That's why I came back to tell you.
Good lad. You asked about him.
Yes, I met a police sergeant I know down the road. I asked him about this Inspector Gould and described the fellow carefully to him. He swore there wasn't any Inspector Gould like that anywhere that he on the force around here.
You didn't tell him.
Good Lord, no. No. I passed it off by saying I'd be having this argument with somebody, but the point is, this sergeant was dead certain they don't have any inspector like that chap that we saw earlier.
By jingo, a fake.
Didn't I tell you? Didn't I say I couldn't imagine a real police officer talking that way to you, to me?
Well, you were right. There isn't such inspector. We've been had.
I'm going to make certain about this.
What are you going to do?
I'm going to ring the Chief Constable, my friend Colonel Roberts.
Oh, careful what you say, dear.
Of course, of course. Hello. Rumley 8752. I was going to do this anyhow. I've had my suspicions all along. Oh, Colonel Roberts, please. Mr. Arthur Burling here. Oh, Roberts. Burling here. Sorry to ring you so late, but can you tell me if you have an Inspector Gould on your staff? Just joined lately. Yes, Gould. Goole. About 5'11". Yeah, mid-50s. Grey hair. Yes. Northern accent. I see. Yes, yes. Well, that settles it. No. Just a little argument we're having. Good night. Good night. See you, Roberts. Bye-bye now. Well. There's no Inspector Gould here. That man was definitely not a police officer. As Gerald said, we've been had.
I felt it all the time. He never talked like one. He didn't even look like one.
This makes all the difference, you know. In fact, it makes all the difference.
Of course.
Oh, I suppose we're all nice people now.
If you've nothing more sensible than that to say, Sheila, you'd better keep quiet.
But Sheila's right, though.
And you'd better keep quiet anyhow. If that had been a police inspector and he'd heard you confess...
Careful.
You see, Gerald, you haven't got to know all of our crimes and idiocies.
Well, that's all right. I don't want to. Now, what do you make of this business now? Was it a hoax?
Of course. Somebody put that fellow up to this, coming here and hoaxing us. There are people in this town who dislike me enough to do that. We ought to have seen through it. But in the ordinary course of events, I would have done so. But coming just like that, bang on top of our little celebration, just when we're all feeling very pleased with ourselves, naturally, it took me by surprise.
I wish I'd been here when he first arrived. I would have asked him a few questions before he asked us any.
Well, it's all right saying that now.
I was the only one who didn't give in to him. And now I say we must discuss this business quietly and sensibly and decide if there's anything to be done about it.
You're absolutely right, my dear. Already, we've discovered one important fact. That fellow was a fraud, and we've been hoaxed. And that may not be the end of it by any means.
I'm sure it isn't.
You are, eh? Good, good, good. Eric, sit down.
Oh, I'm all right.
All right? You're anything but all right. And you needn't stand there as if...
As if what?
As if you'd nothing to do with us. Just remember your own position, young man. If anybody's up to the neck in this business, you are. So you'd better take some interest in it.
But I do take some interest in it. I take too much. That's my trouble.
It's mine too.
Now listen, you two. If you're still feeling on edge, then the least you could do is to keep quiet. Leave this to us. I'll admit that fellow's antic rattled us a bit, but we found him out, and all we have to do is to keep our heads. Now it's our turn.
Our turn to do what?
To behave sensibly, Sheila, which is more than you're doing at the moment.
What's the use of talking about behaving sensibly? Why, you're beginning to pretend now that nothing really happened at all. And I can't see it like that. The girl's still dead, isn't she? Nobody's brought her back to life, have they?
That's what I feel, Eric. And that's what they don't seem to understand.
Yes, but whoever this chap was, the fact remains, I did what I did. And Mother did what she did. And the rest of you all did what you did to her. It's the same rotten story, whether it's told to a police inspector or to somebody else. Why, according to you, I ought to feel better. I stole some money, Gerald. You might as well know. But I don't care. The money's not the important thing. It's what happened to the girl and what we all did to her that matters. And I still feel the same about it. Well, that's why I don't feel like sitting around and having nice, cosy talk.
And Eric's absolutely right. And it's the best thing any one of us has said tonight, and it makes me feel a little bit less ashamed of us. You're just beginning to pretend all over again.
Look, for God's sake!
Oh,
Well, my dear, they're so damned exasperating. They just won't try to understand our position or to see the difference between a lot of stuff coming out like this in private or a downright public scandal.
And I say the girl's dead and we all helped to kill her. That's what matters.
And I say either stop shouting or get out. Some fathers I know would have kicked you out by now. So hold your tongue if you want to stay here.
Don't give a damn now whether I stay here or not.
You'll stay here long enough to give me an account of that money you stole. Yes, and to pay it back too.
but that won't bring Eva Smith back to life, will it?
No, and it doesn't alter the fact that we all helped to kill her.
But is it a fact?
Of course it is. Oh, you don't know the whole story.
I suppose you're going to prove that you didn't spend last summer keeping this girl instead of seeing me.
I did keep a girl last summer. I admitted it. And I'm sorry, Sheila.
Well, I must admit you came out of it better than the rest of us. The inspector said that.
He wasn't an inspector.
Well, he inspected us all right. And don't start dodging and pretending now. Between us, we drove that girl to commit suicide.
Did we? Who said so? Because I say there's no more real evidence we did than there was that that chap is an inspector.
Of course there is.
No, there isn't. Look at it. A man comes here pretending to be a police officer. It's a hoax of some kind. But what does he do? Very artfully, working on bits of information that he's picked up here and there, he bluffs us into confessing that we've all been mixed up in this girl's life in one way or another.
And so we have.
But how do you know it's the same girl.
Now, wait a minute. Let's see how that would work. No, it wouldn't. No.
We've all admitted it.
All right, we've all admitted something to do with the girl, but how do you know it's the same girl? Look here, Mr. Burling. You sack a girl called Eva Smith. You've forgotten that he shows you a photograph of her, and then you remember, right?
Yes, that part's straightforward. But what then?
Well, he happens to know that Sheila once had a girl sacked from Millward's store. He tells us it's this Eva Smith, and he shows her a photograph that she recognises.
Yes, the same photograph.
How do you know it's the same photograph? Did you see the one he showed your father?
No, I didn't.
Well, Gerald, he says. And I know we have no proof. We have no proof it's the same photograph, and therefore no proof it was the same girl. Now take me. I never saw a photograph, remember? He caught me out by suddenly announcing that this girl changed her name from to Daisy Renton, and I gave myself away because I'd known a Daisy Renton.
And there wasn't the slightest proof that this Daisy Renton was really Eva Smith. We've only his word for it. And we've his word for it that he was a police inspector. And we know now he was lying. So he could have been lying all of the time.
Of course he could. Probably was. Now, what happened after I left?
I was upset because Eric had left the house, and this man said that if Eric didn't come back, he'd have to go and find him. Well, that made me feel worse still. His manner was so severe, and he seemed so confident. Then quite suddenly, he said I'd seen Eva Smith just 2 weeks ago.
Those were his exact words.
And like a fool, I said yes, I had.
I don't see now why you did that. She didn't call herself Eva Smith when she came to see you at the committee, did she?
No, of course she didn't. But feeling so worried, when he suddenly turned on me with those questions, I answered more or less as he wanted me to answer.
But Mother, don't forget he showed you a photograph of the girl before that, and you obviously recognised it.
Did anybody else see it?
No, he only showed it to me.
Then don't you see, there's still no proof it was really the same girl. He might have showed you a photograph of any girl that applied to the committee. And how do we know that it was really Eva Smith or Daisy Renton?
Gerald's dead right. He could have used a different photograph each time and we'd been none the wiser. We may have all been recognising different girls.
Exactly. Did he ask you to identify a photograph, Eric?
No, he didn't need a photograph by the time he got around to me. But, well, obviously it must have been the same girl that came to see Mother.
Why must it?
Well, she said that she had to help it because she wouldn't take any more stolen money. And, well, the girl I knew had told me that already.
Even then, that may have been all nonsense.
Well, I don't see much nonsense about it when a girl goes and kills herself. Well, you lot might be letting yourselves off nicely, but I can't, and nor can Mother. We did her in all right.
Wait a minute. Don't be in such a hurry to put yourself in court. That interview with your mother could have been just as much a put-up job like all this police inspector business. The whole damn thing can have been a piece of bluff.
How can it? The girl's dead, isn't she?
What girl? There are probably 4 or 5 different girls.
Well, that doesn't matter to me. The one I knew is dead.
Is she? How do we know she is?
That's right, you've got it. How do we know any girl killed herself today?
Now, answer that. Let's look at it from this fellow's point of view. We're having a little celebration, and we're feeling rather pleased with ourselves. Now he has to work a trick on us. Well, The first thing he has to do is to give us such a shock that after that he can bluff us all the time. So he starts off. A girl has died in the infirmary. She drank some strong bleach. Died in agony.
All right, don't pile it on.
There you are, there you are. Just repeating it shakes you a bit. And that's what he had to do, shake us at once. And then start questioning us until we didn't know where we were. Oh, let's admit it. He had the last laugh on us.
Well, he could have laughed his head off if only I'd known it was all a hoax.
I'm convinced it is. No police inquiry, no one girl that all this happened to, no scandal.
And no suicide?
We can settle that at once
How?
by ringing up the infirmary. Either there's a dead girl there, or there isn't.
It will look a bit queer, won't it, ringing at this time of night?
I don't mind doing it.
Okay.
And if there isn't?
Nobody's been brought in having drunk bleach. They haven't had a suicide for months.
There you are, proof positive. The whole story is a lot of moonshine. Nothing but an elaborate sell. Nobody likes to be sold as badly as that, but for all that, Gerald, have a drink.
I'll have a whiskey if I may.
Okay, come on.
Well, you see... oh, lovely.
And I must say, Gerald, you've argued this most cleverly. I'm very, very grateful to you.
Well, you see, while I was out of the house, I got to think of a few things while I was cooling off. Oh, thanks. Yes, absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Yes, he certainly kept us on the run. Believe you me.
Yeah, I'll admit now, he gave me a bit of a scare at the time, but I had a special reason for not wanting any public scandal just now. Well, here's to us. Come on, Sheila, don't look like that. It's over now.
Well, the worst part is, but you're forgetting one thing I can't forget. Everything we said that happened really had happened. If it didn't end tragically, then that's lucky for us. But it might not have done.
But the whole thing's different now. Come, you can see that, can't you? You all helped to kill her. Oh, I wish you could have seen your faces when he said that. Going to bed, young woman?
I want to get out of this. It frightens me the way you talk.
Nonsense. You'll have a good laugh over it yet. Look, you'd better ask Gerald for that ring you gave back to him, hadn't you? Then you'll feel better.
You're pretending everything's the same as it was before.
No, I'm not.
No, but these others are.
Well, isn't it? We've been had, that's all.
So nothing's really happened? So there's nothing to be sorry for, nothing to learn? We can all go on behaving just like we did?
Well, why shouldn't we?
I tell you, whoever that inspector was, it was anything but a joke. You knew it then. You began to learn something, and now you've stopped. You're ready to go on in the same old way.
And you're not, eh?
No, because I remember what he said, how he looked and how he made me feel. Fire and anguish. And it frightens me the way you talk, and I can't listen to any more of it.
And I agree with Sheila. It frightens me too.
Well, go to bed then and stop being hysterical.
They're only overtired. They'll feel differently tomorrow. They'll be just as amused as we are.
Everything's all right now, Sheila. What about this ring?
No, not yet. It's too soon. I must think.
Now, look at the pair of them. The famous younger generation who know it all, and they can't even take a joke.
What else can we read this time?
Yes, Mr. Arthur Burling speaking. What? Coming here? That was the police. A girl has died on the way to the infirmary after swallowing bleach. An inspector is coming here to ask some questions.